but I do other exhibitions here too, on fashion, on ceramics, all sorts of things. It's a very, very fun place to be, and we're so happy that you're here to be with us today. So, Alexander, I'm going to introduce you first, and then I will introduce Beau. So, our host today is Alexander Hankin, a well-known arts philanthropist and social commentator. I'm going to read because I will get all the details in that case. Hankin's passions for the arts has led him to take an active role in major art institutions, as well as being an art, fashion, and culture columnist for Philadelphia Style Magazine, Gotham, Guest of a Guest, and Quest Magazine. His interest in the arts also informed his online persona at HRH Alexander. Hankin is Chair Emeritus of the Young Friends of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, a member of the Board of Directors of Opera Philadelphia, and currently sits on the Whitney Museum of American Art's Contemporaries Committee and the London-based Serpentine Futures Contemporaries Committee. He is actively involved in the Guggenheim Young Acquisitions Committee, and he created and chairs the Downhill Disco at the Aspen Art Museum, a unique après-ski fundraiser. But most importantly, he helps launch and co-chairs the Mad Luminaries Group, which is his role here today, and hosts talks and panels for the museum under Luminaries Live. And Beau, beloved Beau, is here today with us. He has a piece in Out of the Jewelry Box that you probably all saw called Button Armor that he made in 2014. So enthusiastically proclaimed the Button Man, McCall creates wearable and visual art by applying clothing buttons onto upcycled fabrics, materials, and objects. His work is held in the permanent collection here, as well as at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Victoria and Albert Museum, FIT, the Schoenberg Center for Research in Black Culture, the Amistad Research Center in New Orleans, the Museum of Modern Art Library, the Leslie Lohman Museum of Art, the Stonewall National Museum and Archives in Fort Lauderdale, and the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art Library. Wow. Private collections include Cindy Lauper, Debbie Harry of Blondie, the artists Jeffrey Gibson, and gallerist Christina Grajales. He is also the creator of the wearable art line Triple T shirts. Super wonderful shirts. Anyway, that's another subject. In 2021, McCall released his debut artist book, Rewind, Memories on Repeat. And currently, and most importantly, he is the subject of the Fuller Craft Museum's exhibition, Beau McCall Buttons On, complete with catalog. McCall was born in Philadelphia. They have Philadelphia in common, and currently lives and works in Harlem, New York. Welcome, Beau. And this is Solio.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Sorry, I'm focused on the video.
Thank you, Barbara. Thanks everyone for coming out on this rainy night. I really just wanted an opportunity to introduce you all to the Museum of Art and Design and to Beau, and just sort of see what we have going on here. You know, why I really love the Museum of Art and Design is any day you come into the museum, you can see art being made. It's a very hands-on museum, as you can see from the exhibition that we're sitting in, and feel free to draw if you feel so inspired while we're talking.
New space, so that people can really sit down and,
and we launched the Luminaries program in 2019. I really just wanted to create a program where young patrons could connect to artists. There's a lot of places you can go and you can get curatorial talks, and you can see exhibitions, but there weren't a lot of places where you could connect to artists. So that's something that I really wanted to found as the principles of the Luminaries group. So on those principles, Beau McCall, thank you so much for this evening. So as Barbara said, we both have Philadelphia in common, yes. And I find that that is so much an identity of Philadelphia creatives. And you just describe yourself as a homegrown artist. So tell me a little bit about growing up in Philadelphia and how you got started.
Okay, I grew up in South Philadelphia. I grew up in public housing. At the time, public housing, it wasn't what it is today. Everybody had both of their parents there. Most of the kids went to Catholic school, which was right up the street, and another one was around the corner. And then we had Hawthorne that was directly across the street from our building, and the public school, junior high school, Bartley was around the corner. And then the location was close to Center City, which we got spoiled because we could walk everywhere. You walk to the movies, you go to John Wanamaker's, you know, Walnut Street is I would compare Walnut Street to Fifth Avenue, but on a smaller level. So growing up, yeah, much smaller. But growing up in public housing at the time was really fun. You know, everybody knew you by your first and last name. Everybody knew your parents. We had a lot of after-school programs, which I learned a lot of my crafts from. Summer camp, we went to summer camp, and then we went to overnight camp. I didn't really like that as much, but I had to go. And it was like family-based, because the people that we lived next door to, we kept our doors open and we just would go in and out like it was one big family. So it was a lot of that in the building. As far as my craft is concerned, most of that I got from my mom. My mom liked to decorate. You know, even though we were living in low-income housing, I was a kid, so I didn't really know. So we would be out, and my brother and my mom would take stuff off of the trash. Oh my God, we would be so embarrassed. It would be anything, and we'd be like, "What is she gonna do with this?" So she would get. I can't even remember some of the things.
She told me some of the
yeah.
upcycling
Yeah,
really started with your mother.
Before people upcycling had a label, my mom was doing that years ago. Like I said, picking stuff off the trash. She went to junk shops, rummy sales, flea markets, Goodwill, Salvation Army. She went to all those places. And at the time, we really didn't understand that, you know, we were on a limited income. Even though my dad had a job, my dad worked in a pencil company. So it started like that. She would bring stuff home and clean it up, and it would become a part of the decor in the apartment. And then she loved colors. And I remember one time she was describing, it might have been Modigliani, she really liked him. And she was telling me about outfits, and she would say, "But see this part of the picture, we see clouds and we see the sky and all this stuff. That's the upper part of your outfit. Then when you get to the bottom part of your outfit, it could be the roots and the trees. So it's a whole nother color combination." So when I would get dressed, and people say, "Oh, you don't match." I'm like, "No, this matches from the head to the top and from the waist down." So it started like that. Then when I got the creative bug, like every couple of weeks, you know, I wanted to macrame and I would get bored. Then I wanted to weave, bored. But she always supplied the supplies, and whatever I asked for, she encouraged my creativity. So it kind of started like that. I got two other brothers, they were athletic. I didn't get that gene at all, so I had to compensate for it some kind of way. So yeah, that's how it started.
And then you moved to New York with a duffel bag and $200 in your pocket.
Yes.
And what was that like first getting to the city in the 80s?
Well, first I started, a friend of mine, which is one of the people that I talk about in Rewind, he came up with this idea that we should just move to New York on a whim. And I was very shy, very introverted, and I'm like, I'm not going to that big city and not have a job and not have a roof over my head. He's like, "No, let's just go." It's like, "No, you go. I'll sit it out." So I think he was here for maybe 5 or 6 years, and I was on my way to Newark to stay with a friend. It didn't work out, and I ended up staying with Renee in Harlem. And like I said, I had the duffel bag, I had $200, and a bag of buttons. I knew I wanted to do something creative. I just didn't know what it was. somebody took me to a Harlem Week fashion show, I think maybe a year later, it might have been that same summer, I'm not sure. And I saw this fashion show with all these black creators, black models, black commentators. It was just black all over the place, right? And I had not seen that on that scale. Because the block party is river to river. It looked like it was 1 million people on 125th Street. So we right in smack dab in the middle of an urban city, and all this creativity is going on. So I'm watching the show, and I said to the person I'm like, next year I will be a part of this. So they laughed me off. Show was over. Getting back to my mom, I started sourcing Levi's jeans and Levi's jeans jackets, and then I got some bustiers. And for that winter, I think maybe I did a collection of a dozen pieces. And a friend of mine called and said, "Oh, Harlem Week, they're doing auditions. You should take some of your things around." I go to the audition, they examine my work, front and back, inside out. They love the work. And they asked me how soon could I start. And I think I started that weekend, which ended up being like an almost 10-year stay with HIF. And then that was Lois Alexander, that was her name.
And the 88 show, that was like your big...
That was the introduction.
And that's when your name got out there.
Yes.
And tell us a little about what you did for that show.
Oh, well, I think I called my sister and I said, "Oh, I'm in this big fashion show. You need to come over." So she came over. I did the show, and we were walking down 125th Street. People started to recognize me, and they was like, "Oh, you're Beau McCall. You're Beau McCall." My sister was like, "It's nobody. It's like, he's just my brother." I'm like, "Oh, girl, something's gonna happen from this." So I'm in New York. I'm in the big city, right? And I do these shows. During Harlem Week, it would be like a month of shows. A couple, maybe 3 or 4 during the week. We would do City Hall. We would do 135th Street, 125th Street. We would do the Apollo, and just make the rounds in this circuit. So the first year, when I did the very first fashion show, at the end, everybody did the finale, and they started calling all the designers' names, and of course you walked out with your mama or whoever, and I'm standing there watching everybody go out with their model, and I hear my name, but I don't hear my name, and I'm just standing there, I'm like, "Beau McCall, the button, and I just stood there like I froze, and then the show was over.
It's crazy you missed.
So I missed the whole finale. Because that's how excited I was to be a part of it. So, I started learning the ropes and, got more in tune to what I was doing and what was expected of me.
Well, and from there, your career has just grown and grown. And Barbara listed so many amazing institutions and galleries that have your work and private collectors. I wonder, is there maybe one moment or within that story you were like, this is just crazy? Well, and I know you have a lot of those.
Yes.
But maybe
all
one
that
you can
didn't
share.
happen overnight. The journey has been very, very long, and there's been a lot of highs, and there's been a lots of lows, and lots of disappointments where, people promised me the world, and nothing happened. And early on, I would get really, really excited, and I would call home and call my parents and call my siblings and say, "I met this person last night." And they said they was gonna do this, that, and the other. And then things would happen. I remember my younger brother saying to me, "Did you make any money yet?" I'm like, "No, but I was at a party with Jay-Z, and I was at a party with this person and that person." They were not impressed. And then I got Women's Wear Daily in '92, and from that article, it was a store in Jersey called Panache. And this woman, she ordered 3 jackets from me. She didn't ask me how much, she just told me what she wanted, and she gave me a color scheme, and I went from there. I think maybe at that time, it might have been $2,000, give or take. And I got the check, and I blew the check up this big, and I sent it to my brother. My brother, he was like, "Oh, okay, now you're doing things. Now we talking, whatever." So it would be things like that. a girlfriend of mine that I used to run around town with, she was my muse at the time, and she used to wear all my creations. And we would go to a lot of different functions. And I don't want to mention no names, but it was some high-level people in the room. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Call me tomorrow, give me your information, and you know, we'll set up an appointment. You know, we want to interview you and photograph your work. And you know, I will follow up immediately. And then the next day would act like they never even talked to me before, like they never even heard of me. And that just like, it sort of crushed me, but it didn't stop. I didn't lose focus. I just continued doing what I was doing. And then I hadn't looked at what I was doing as look at myself as an artist. I just looked at myself as like, you know, I just make things. I like making stuff. And when people would ask me, what do you do? I was like, oh, you know, I make stuff for buttons, instead of saying, oh, I'm Beau McCall, I'm an artist. And I think being discouraged by all the rejection, I wasn't so sure if I met up to that level with my talent. So it took me a long time before I embraced it.
Where you clearly are that talent, and your work is in so many amazing collections and amazing institutions. So
well, now I feel that,
yeah.
But early on I didn't feel that.
You know, Museum of Art and Design, this is so much about what we show is about craft. And I wonder, with your work, do you see it more as craft? Do you see it more as fashion? Do you see it more as art? Or do you see it as the place where these disciplines cross?
Well, you know what, with that, I've been blurring the lines early on. I never really followed trends. I never really listened to outsiders tell me what I could and could not do. I never listened to, oh, this is the color of the season, so you should wear yellow, or plaid is in this year, go out and get some plaid things. I just did what I felt. And most of the stuff that I felt in my heart. And even when my mom would be decorating, she didn't, she bought her like a lot of decorating magazines, I guess for inspiration, but she didn't follow anybody. She just did what the pulse of her instinct was telling her to do, and that's what I followed. And as far as, you know, I do fashion, wearable art, and I do visual art. I just blur the lines, because people always say to me, well, how do you stay so interested in a button? So when I'm doing visuals, you know, there are times when I'm like, oh, I need a time out. So when I take that time out, rest my fingers, I go to the wearables. And it's a whole nother thing, and vice versa. When I get tired of wearables, I go back to the visuals. And now I've incorporated the collage thing, where I'm not actually working with the physical button. So it's all these different categories that I have my hand in, and it keeps it fresh. So it's not like I'm a craft artist, I'm an artist, and that encompasses
So
everything.
And I think that's really great how you can cross genres so easily. American Crafts Magazine dubbed you the Button Man. Is that something that defines you, that title, or do you define that title?
No, I think I defined the title. I know early on, you know, I would show up in spaces and people like, oh, that's the button guy. Or, I'm gonna call you Count Buttons. I'm gonna call you Sir Buttons, Lord Buttons. So I got all these little tags with buttons in it. So I started embracing it. But the most popular one out of all of them is the Button Man. And in some of the places in the garment district, it's like, oh, Mr. Buttons is here, Mr. Buttons is here. So I love it.
Well, speaking of buttons, button armor is in the show, so why don't we walk over and we can talk a little bit about that piece. We are now in out-of-the-box jewelry and your piece, button armor. So tell us a little bit about this piece and kind of how it fits into the show.
So button armor for me is, early on when I was much younger, being a young black guy in Philadelphia and just, you know, navigating the spaces and then coming to New York and still having that youth factor on my side. And some of the spaces that I would be in, I didn't feel safe. And even just moving to and fro on the subway, trying to get from point A to point B, I always felt like I needed to be guarded. I needed to be on my best A game to stay out of danger. So when this came about, I met Solio, which is my everything partner, my muse, and my camera guy right now. He started doing these exhibitions. And I remember before I officially tagged myself as an artist, I would go to a lot of galleries and a lot of openings. The artist would be in the room and I couldn't identify the artist. So I said, well, when I get in that space and I become an artist, you're gonna know me from my work. So I started adorning myself with buttons. So if you see me, it's buttons somewhere on my body. Whether it's around my neck, my wrist, this button armor, because this was the first piece that I used the armor as an identifier. Like, oh, that's Beau McCall. And they said, oh, there he is over there, the guy with buttons. So even with that, it's, the armor still highlights who I am as a person, and it still protects me at the same time. Because armor shows up in a few other pieces in my work that I just feel like in the space that I am in, even creating, there's a certain amount of mystique in there that I want to be protected, and I don't want you to get in to my psyche to even know what my next creation is. This, Barbara had me come down and mold it a little bit, and I thought I liked it better on myself, but it looks so much better in this case.
It's fantastic.
And then most of these buttons here, my mom gave me. And some of these buttons, from her sourcing buttons, I might have had for like 30 years. And she still collects buttons for me. And when people give me buttons, I don't use them right away. I try to figure out where to place them in the current project. If they don't work, I just move on to something else. But this right here, she gave me this when I first came to New York. These. And I remember doing a fashion show, and one of the buttons came off of one of my pieces, and a couple shows later, a model walked in with this button sewed on her clothes. I said, that's mine. So my hands have probably crossed billions of buttons. But when I start creating, I know the buttons, because I sit and I live with them for lengthy periods of time.
Will you ever reuse pieces, buttons from one piece to the next?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. Even if I lose a piece or lose a button somewhere, I just go someplace else and just fill the space up. It doesn't necessarily have to be that exact button to fill the space up. I use the buttons that they have to fit in the spaces, especially when it's flat pieces. I'm trying to fill up spaces to make a sheet of fabric in the form of a button.
Well, we're in an exhibition out of the box jewelry. I wonder if being a gay artist, what sort of responsibility do you feel of being an activist, or do you not feel that comes along with, being a gay artist?
Well, a lot of folks like to speak through their work, and I have in lots of pieces, but I don't intentionally tag myself as an activist. There's other folks out there who can speak the language, who can walk the walk, talk the talk. I'm not one of them. I'll just leave that to somebody else. If it's something that I'm really adamant about, then I'll approach that subject. But to wear the label, no.
Well, I think that's great. And I think that your work just reflects who you are. And I think so much of your work comes from love and from positivity. I mean, I was telling you how when I saw you in the Taxi TV, that you just lit up my cab. It was like you were there with me, and it was a dreary day, and you just lit up the cab for me. And that's why I wanted to talk to you tonight. So I wonder, is that the message that you want people to walk away with when they see your work?
I had a conversation the other day about the word gay and the word queer. And right now, queer is very popular in the community, but I consider myself gay because gay started out as being happy, and I'm happy. So my work is happy. I want people, when they see the work, I think the edge that I have on a lot of other artists is that the button, we all can identify with the button in some form of fashion. That your mom had a jar of buttons, a can of buttons, the cigar box of buttons. So when you see it, you immediately can identify it. It's not like it's something abstract and you have to figure out what it is. I think that's the edge that I have on other artists.
Well,
I miss your point.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I mean, I think that is why we can all connect to it, because it's something that all of us see every day, that you bring it to life. You make it beautiful. You create something different than it from just
right. I take it out of its content from just being a general fastener. Because when we fasten our clothes every day, we're not looking at the button as a piece of art. You're just fastening your clothes and you move on with your day. With me, I think out of all the stuff that I've done prior to the button, the reason why I'm obsessed, addicted, and married to the button, I never know what I'm gonna find. Every time I dig my hand in a jar, I get an old dusty mildew bag of buttons. It's always gems there. It's always something I've never seen before, and it's always something that keeps me excited and keeps me on my toes.
So I have a question, can I bring you buttons?
Oh, sure.
Because I have bags of them. And even though I always think like, oh, if I lose one, but you never do. So now I know what to do with them.
Yes.
But before we end, before we go to dinner, rather, I asked every artist who's ever interviewed this same question. And I prepped you for it because
Yes, you
normally
did.
I just throw it at Nicole. But mad if we were going to make a box of Crayola crowns to sell in our bookshop. What would your color be and what would you call it?
I thought about that, and you know, when we had the conversation, I'm wearing a lot of color today, right? I think I would choose black. Black is mysterious. Black it can morph into so many different things. And then you can't have the other colors without black being the base color. So I would say black, because I have my moments where it's black, black, black. And in recent months, when I'm out shopping, most of everything I buy is black. So I'd say black.
And what would you call it?
What? More black.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for doing
Thank you
this.
for having me.
You're so fabulous. And we are going to continue the conversation over dinner.
Okay.
And if anyone has any questions before we head out of the museum, for Beau or for Barbara about the exhibition, we'd be happy to answer them. And if not, we will head over to Blue Ribbon for some sushi.
Did you ever know the store Tender Buttons?
Oh, yes.
Closed, right?
They closed and didn't tell me.
Yeah.
I ran into the woman on the street and I was like, you didn't tell me you were closing. And the owner, she said she just came downstairs one day and said, we're closing. And they started wrapping up shop the next day.
They've been there forever.
Yes, they had the best buttons in the city.
Expensive buttons.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so maybe over dinner you can share the book from Fuller, because Beau's designs, they're even better in person, but they did photograph so fantastic, and Celia was modeling all of them in the book, and there's some really amazing pieces in there that I would love for all of you to see. So with that, we want to grab our stuff and we'll head over.
Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.